Your heart is racing. Your mind is spinning with worst-case scenarios. Your chest feels tight, and every thought seems to spiral into another wave of worry. Sound familiar? If you've ever felt trapped by your own anxious thoughts, unable to find peace even in quiet moments, then what you're about to discover will change everything. Most people think anxiety is something that happens to them, something they have no control over. They try breathing exercises that barely work, positive thinking that feels fake, or distractions that only provide temporary relief. But here's what they don't understand. Anxiety isn't your enemy. It's a signal. And once you learn to decode that signal and work with your mind instead of against it, you'll discover something profound. You have more power over your mental state than you ever imagined. Today, we're going to explore not just how to calm your anxious mind, but how to fundamentally transform your relationship with anxiety itself. These aren't temporary fixes or surface-level techniques. This is about mastering your inner world, understanding the deeper patterns that create anxiety, and building an unshakable sense of inner calm that lasts. Chapter 1. Understanding the anxious mind. Before you can quiet anxiety, you must first understand what it truly is. Anxiety isn't just nervousness or worry. It's your mind's ancient alarm system designed to protect you from danger. But in our modern world, this system often becomes overactive, triggering warning signals for situations that aren't actually threatening your survival. Think of your anxious mind like a smoke detector that's become too sensitive. It's constantly going off, even when there's no real fire. The problem isn't that the detector is broken. It's that it needs to be recalibrated. Your anxiety isn't a character flaw or a weakness. It's actually a sign that your mind is trying to protect you, but it's using outdated programming. The anxious mind operates on what psychologists call the negativity bias. This means your brain is naturally wired to focus on potential threats, problems, and dangers. From an evolutionary perspective, this made perfect sense. The humans who survived were the ones who were constantly scanning for predators, planning for famines, and preparing for the worst. But in today's world, this same mechanism can turn everyday situations into catastrophic scenarios in your mind. When anxiety takes hold, your brain enters what's known as the fight-flight-freeze response. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm center, hijacks your rational thinking. Blood flows away from your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logical thought and decision-making, and floods the emotional centers of your brain. This is why anxious thoughts often feel so overwhelming, and why logic seems to disappear when you need it most. But here's what most people don't realize. This process isn't permanent, and it's not uncontrollable. Your brain has something called neuroplasticity, which means it can be rewired through conscious practice and awareness. Every time you successfully calm your anxious mind, you're literally creating new neural pathways that make future calm states easier to access. The first step in mastering your anxious mind is to stop fighting it. Resistance creates more tension. Instead of trying to push away anxious thoughts, you need to develop a different relationship with them. Think of anxiety like turbulence on an airplane. The turbulence isn't dangerous to the plane, and fighting against it only makes the ride more uncomfortable. But if you can learn to remain calm within the turbulence, you maintain your power and clarity. Your anxious mind also thrives on uncertainty. It wants to know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how to control every outcome. But life is inherently uncertain, and trying to control what's beyond your control is like trying to hold water in your hands. The more tightly you squeeze, the more it slips away. Learning to find peace within uncertainty is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Most people make the mistake of trying to eliminate anxiety completely. But anxiety, like all emotions, carries information. Sometimes it's warning you about real issues that need your attention. Other times, it's simply old programming running in the background. The key is learning to distinguish between useful anxiety that's trying to help you and destructive anxiety that's holding you back. Chapter 2. The Root Causes of Mental Unrest. To truly quiet your anxious mind, you must understand what feeds it. Anxiety doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's often the result of deeper patterns, unresolved issues, and ways of thinking that have become automatic. Most people treat the symptoms of anxiety without addressing the root causes, which is why their relief is only temporary. One of the primary root causes of anxiety is perfectionism. If you're constantly setting impossibly high standards for yourself, always worried about making mistakes, or afraid of disappointing others, you're creating a perfect breeding ground for anxiety. Perfectionism is based on the illusion that you can control outcomes through effort and worry. But this creates a state of constant tension because perfection is impossible, and control is largely an illusion. Perfectionist thinking often sounds like this: if I just work hard enough, plan well enough, worry enough about all the possibilities, then nothing will go wrong. But this mindset actually increases anxiety because it puts you in a constant state of hypervigilance, always scanning for potential problems and mistakes. The perfectionist mind never allows you to rest because there's always something more to improve, fix, or worry about. Another major root cause is the need for certainty and control. Your anxious mind wants guarantees. It wants to know that everything will work out, that you'll be safe, that people will approve of you, that your future is secure. But life doesn't offer guarantees, and the more you try to control what's uncontrollable, the more anxious you become. This creates a vicious cycle where uncertainty triggers anxiety, which makes you seek more control, which leads to more anxiety when control proves impossible. Many people don't realize that their anxiety is often rooted in unresolved past experiences. Your nervous system has a memory, and if you've experienced trauma, rejection, failure, or overwhelming stress in the past, your mind might be stuck in a protective mode, always expecting danger even when you're safe. This is why some people feel anxious even during good times in their lives. Their nervous system is operating based on old information that no longer applies to their current reality. The stories you tell yourself about life also create and maintain anxiety. If you believe that the world is dangerous, that people can't be trusted, that you're not good enough, or that disaster is always around the corner, your mind will constantly be on high alert. These limiting beliefs act like background programs running in your mental computer, influencing every thought and reaction you have. Social conditioning plays a huge role in anxiety as well. We live in a culture that profits from your worry. News media, social media, and advertising all thrive on keeping you in a state of fear and dissatisfaction. You're constantly bombarded with messages about threats, problems, and things you should be worried about. Over time, This external anxiety becomes internalized, and you begin to generate worry and fear even when there's no external trigger. Another often overlooked cause is the disconnection from your body and natural rhythms. When you're constantly in your head, overthinking and analyzing, you lose touch with your body's wisdom and natural calm. Your body has its own intelligence and its own way of processing stress and emotions. But if you're always trying to solve everything mentally, you miss the healing and peace that can come from reconnecting with your physical self. Lifestyle factors also contribute significantly to anxiety. Poor sleep, too much caffeine, lack of physical movement, inadequate nutrition, and chronic stress all create a physiological environment where anxiety thrives. Your mental state isn't separate from your physical state. When your body is out of balance, your mind follows. This is why addressing anxiety requires a holistic approach that includes taking care of your physical health. The fear of anxiety itself often becomes the biggest problem. Once you've experienced a panic attack or a period of intense anxiety, you might develop what's called anticipatory anxiety. This is anxiety about having anxiety. You become hyper-aware of your internal sensations, constantly monitoring your thoughts and feelings for signs of anxiety. This hypervigilance actually increases anxiety because you're putting so much attention on it. Chapter 3. The Physiology of Calm. Your body and mind aren't separate entities. They're intimately connected, constantly communicating through a complex network of nerves, hormones, and biochemical signals. Understanding this mind-body connection is crucial for mastering anxiety because you can't achieve lasting mental calm without addressing the physiological aspects of stress and anxiety. When you're anxious, your body is in a state of physiological arousal. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense up, stress hormones flood your system, and your digestive processes slow down. This is your body preparing for action, getting ready to fight, flee, or freeze in the face of perceived danger. But when this response is triggered repeatedly by non-threatening situations, it becomes exhausting and harmful to your overall health. The good news is that your body also has natural mechanisms for returning to calm. Your parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest and digest system, is designed to bring you back to a state of relaxation and recovery. The key is learning how to activate this system intentionally rather than waiting for it to happen naturally. One of the most powerful ways to influence your physiology is through conscious breathing. Most people breathe in a way that actually increases anxiety without realizing it. Shallow, rapid breathing from the chest signals to your brain that you're in danger, which triggers more anxiety. But deep, slow breathing from your diaphragm activates the parasympathetic nervous system and sends signals of safety to your brain. The 4-7-8 breathing technique is particularly effective for calming anxiety. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. Hold your breath for 7 counts. Then exhale through your mouth for 8 counts. This pattern not only slows your heart rate and lowers your blood pressure, but it also gives your anxious mind something specific to focus on, interrupting the cycle of worried thoughts. Your posture also directly affects your mental state. When you're anxious, you tend to contract inward, hunching your shoulders, tightening your chest, and collapsing your spine. This closed posture actually reinforces feelings of vulnerability and helplessness. But when you consciously open your posture, stand tall, relax your shoulders, and expand your chest, you send signals of confidence and safety to your brain. Temperature can be another powerful tool for regulating your nervous system. Cold exposure, such as splashing cold water on your face or taking a cold shower, activates your vagus nerve, which is a major component of the parasympathetic nervous system. On the other hand, warmth, such as a hot bath or heating pad on your chest, can also be deeply calming and soothing to an anxious system. Progressive muscle relaxation is a technique that works with your body's natural tendency to hold tension when anxious. By consciously tensing and then releasing different muscle groups throughout your body, you teach your nervous system the difference between tension and relaxation. Start with your toes and work your way up to your head, tensing each muscle group for 5 seconds, then releasing and noticing the contrast between tension and relaxation. The food you eat directly affects your anxiety levels. Blood sugar fluctuations can trigger anxiety symptoms, so eating balanced meals with adequate protein and avoiding excessive sugar and caffeine can help maintain physiological stability. Magnesium deficiency is also linked to increased anxiety, and foods rich in magnesium, such as leafy greens, nuts, and seeds, can help support a calmer nervous system. Movement is medicine for anxiety. When you're anxious, stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline build up in your system. Physical movement helps metabolize these stress chemicals and releases natural mood-boosting endorphins. You don't need intense exercise. Even gentle walking, stretching, or dancing can help discharge nervous energy and return your body to balance. Sleep is when your nervous system repairs and resets itself. Poor sleep quality or insufficient sleep makes you much more vulnerable to anxiety the next day. Creating a calming bedtime routine, keeping your bedroom cool and dark, and avoiding screens before bed all support better sleep quality, which in turn supports better emotional regulation. Understanding your body's natural rhythms can also help you work with your physiology rather than against it. Most people have natural energy cycles throughout the day, and pushing against these cycles can create unnecessary stress. Learning to schedule demanding tasks during your high-energy times and allowing for rest during your low-energy times can prevent the accumulation of stress that often leads to anxiety. Chapter 4. The Power of Present Moment Awareness. One of the most profound realizations you can have about anxiety is that it cannot exist in the present moment. Anxiety is always about the future or the past. You're either worrying about what might happen or ruminating about what has already happened. But in this exact moment, right now, you are safe. This is the foundation of present moment awareness as a tool for calming anxiety. Your anxious mind is like a time traveler that's forgotten how to come home. It's constantly projecting into future scenarios, most of which will never happen, or replaying past events that can't be changed. But your life is only happening right now, in this present moment. Every moment you spend anxious about the future or the past is a moment stolen from the only time you actually have any power. Now, present moment awareness isn't about positive thinking or trying to convince yourself that everything is fine. It's about learning to anchor your attention in the reality of what's actually happening right now, rather than the stories your mind creates about what might happen or what has happened. This is a skill that must be developed through practice, like learning to play an instrument or speak a new language. The breath is one of the most powerful anchors to the present moment because it's always happening now. You cannot breathe in the past or future. You can only breathe in this moment. When you notice your mind spinning with anxious thoughts, gently bring your attention back to your breath. Feel the air entering and leaving your nostrils. Notice the rise and fall of your chest and belly. This isn't about breathing in any special way. It's about using the breath as an anchor to pull you back from mental time travel into the present reality. Your 5 senses are also gateways to the present moment. When anxiety starts to build, consciously connect with what you can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch right now. Look around and really notice colors, shapes, and textures. Listen to the sounds in your environment without trying to change or judge them. This sensory awareness brings you immediately into the present because your senses can only perceive what's happening now. The practice of naming and labeling can also help interrupt anxious thinking patterns. When you notice anxiety arising, simply say to yourself, "I notice I'm having anxious thoughts," or "I notice my mind is time traveling again." This creates a bit of space between you and the anxiety. You're not the anxiety, you're the awareness that notices the anxiety. This subtle shift can be incredibly powerful because it reminds you that you are not your thoughts. Mindfulness meditation is essentially training in present moment awareness. You don't need to sit on a cushion for hours or achieve some special state of consciousness. Mindfulness can be practiced anywhere, anytime. It's simply the practice of noticing when your mind has wandered away from the present and gently bringing it back. Every time you do this, you're strengthening your ability to stay grounded in reality rather than getting lost in mental stories. The anxious mind loves to ask, "What if?" questions. What if this happens? What if that goes wrong? What if I fail? But present moment awareness responds with, "What is?" What is actually happening right now? What do I actually know to be true in this moment? What can I actually perceive with my senses right now? This shift from hypothetical worry to present reality is profoundly calming. Body awareness is another powerful form of present moment practice. Your body is always in the present moment. It cannot be anywhere else. When you bring attention to physical sensations, the weight of your body in your chair, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the temperature of the air on your skin, you automatically come into the now. Your body becomes an anchor that keeps you from drifting into anxious mental waters. Walking meditation combines movement with present moment awareness. As you walk, focus completely on the physical sensations of walking. Feel your feet touching the ground. Notice how your weight shifts from one foot to the other. Observe the movement of your legs and arms. When your mind starts to wander into anxious thoughts, gently bring your attention back to the simple act of walking. Present moment awareness also involves accepting what is actually happening without immediately trying to fix, change, or escape it. This doesn't mean being passive or resigned. It means acknowledging reality as it is before deciding how to respond. Many times, anxiety is created by fighting against what's already happening. When you can accept the present moment, even if it's uncomfortable, you stop wasting energy on resistance and free up that energy for constructive action. The practice of present moment awareness reveals a profound truth. Most of what you worry about never happens, and the things that do happen are rarely as catastrophic as your anxious mind predicted. When you stay present, you see clearly. respond appropriately, and maintain your natural intelligence and wisdom. You realize that you can handle whatever actually comes your way much better than your anxious mind believes. Chapter 5. Rewiring Anxious Thought Patterns. Your thoughts are not facts, but they feel like facts when you're anxious. The anxious mind has a way of making worst-case scenarios seem not just possible, but inevitable. It takes small problems and magnifies them into catastrophes. It takes uncertain situations and fills in the blanks with fearful predictions. But these thought patterns aren't hardwired into your brain. They're habits that can be changed through conscious awareness and practice. Understanding cognitive distortions is the first step in rewiring anxious thought patterns. These are systematic ways that your anxious mind twists reality to confirm its fears. All-or-nothing thinking is one common pattern where everything is either perfect or a complete disaster, with no middle ground. Catastrophizing is another pattern where your mind jumps immediately to the worst possible outcome. Mind reading involves assuming you know what others are thinking about you, usually something negative. Fortune-telling is predicting the future, always negatively. The anxious mind also engages in what's called confirmation bias. Once it decides something is threatening or dangerous, it looks for evidence to support this belief, while ignoring evidence to the contrary. This is why anxious people often feel like their fears are completely logical and justified. Their minds are selectively focusing on information that confirms their anxiety while filtering out information that would calm them. One of the most powerful techniques for changing anxious thought patterns is called cognitive restructuring. This involves learning to question your anxious thoughts rather than automatically believing them. When you notice an anxious thought, ask yourself, is this thought actually true? What evidence do I have for and against this thought? What would I tell a friend who was thinking this way? What's the most realistic outcome? Not the worst-case scenario. The goal isn't to replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts. That often feels fake and doesn't work long-term. The goal is to replace unrealistic thoughts with realistic thoughts. Instead of thinking, I'm going to fail and embarrass myself, you might think, I'm nervous about this presentation, but I'm prepared and I'll do my best. This feels more authentic and is much more likely to calm your nervous system. Thought-stopping techniques can be helpful when you're caught in repetitive, anxious thinking loops. When you notice your mind spinning with the same worried thoughts over and over, you can mentally say, "Stop," or imagine a big red stop sign. Then, immediately redirect your attention to something else. This isn't about suppressing thoughts permanently, but about interrupting unproductive mental patterns so you can choose more helpful thoughts. The practice of diffusion helps you see thoughts as mental events rather than absolute truths. Instead of thinking, I'm going to mess this up, you can think, I'm having the thought that I'm going to mess this up. This subtle language shift creates distance between you and your thoughts, reminding you that thoughts are just mental activity, not necessarily accurate representations of reality. Reframing is another powerful tool for changing thought patterns. This involves looking at situations from different perspectives. If you're anxious about giving a presentation, instead of focusing on what could go wrong, you could reframe it as an opportunity to share knowledge, practice public speaking, or connect with colleagues. The situation doesn't change, but your relationship to it does. The anxious mind often gets stuck in should thinking. You should be further along in your career. You should have more money. You should be in a relationship. You should be able to handle stress better. But should thinking creates resistance to what actually is and sets up impossible standards. Learning to replace should with could or would like to reduces the internal pressure that fuels anxiety. Developing a witness perspective is crucial for changing thought patterns. This means learning to observe your thoughts without being completely identified with them. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices thoughts coming and going. When you can watch your anxious thoughts with curiosity, rather than immediately believing them, they lose much of their power over you. Journaling can be an incredibly powerful tool for rewiring thought patterns. Writing down your anxious thoughts often reveals how unrealistic or exaggerated they are. You can also use journaling to practice cognitive restructuring, writing down your anxious thoughts and then challenging them with more realistic alternatives. The act of writing engages different parts of your brain and can help you gain clarity and perspective. It's important to understand that changing thought patterns takes time and patience. Your anxious thought patterns have been reinforced possibly for years or even decades. They won't change overnight. But every time you catch an anxious thought and consciously choose a more realistic perspective, you're literally rewiring your brain. Neuroplasticity means your brain can form new pathways throughout your life, but it requires consistent practice and repetition. Chapter 6. The Art of Mental Detachment. Mental detachment is perhaps one of the most misunderstood concepts when it comes to managing anxiety. Many people think detachment means becoming cold, uncaring, or disconnected from life. But true mental detachment is actually the opposite. It's about caring deeply while not being controlled by outcomes. It's about engaging fully with life while maintaining inner peace regardless of external circumstances. The anxious mind is constantly attached to specific outcomes. It needs things to go a certain way to feel safe. It needs people to approve, plans to work out perfectly, and future events to unfold exactly as imagined. But this attachment to outcomes is what creates suffering. When you're attached to something happening a specific way, you're setting yourself up for anxiety whenever that outcome is threatened or uncertain. Think of attachment like gripping a rope too tightly. The tighter you grip, the more your hands hurt, and paradoxically, the more likely you are to lose your hold altogether. But when you hold the rope with a firm yet relaxed grip, you maintain control without creating unnecessary tension. This is the essence of mental detachment. You care about things, you work toward goals, you love people. But you don't grip so tightly that you create suffering for yourself. Detachment begins with understanding the difference between preference and attachment. A preference is wanting something to happen while being okay if it doesn't. An attachment is needing something to happen to feel okay about yourself or your life. When you have a preference, you can work toward what you want while maintaining inner peace. When you have an attachment, your peace depends on getting what you want, which means you're constantly vulnerable to anxiety. One of the most powerful forms of detachment is outcome independence. This means you do your best, make your effort, and then release your attachment to the result. You plant the seed, water it, give it sunlight, but you don't stand over it demanding that it grow faster or in a particular way. You trust the process and accept whatever unfolds. This doesn't mean you don't care about results. It means your inner peace doesn't depend on those results. The practice of detachment also involves letting go of the need to control other people. Much anxiety comes from wanting others to behave differently, to understand us, to approve of us, or to make different choices. But other people are not under your control, and trying to control them is like trying to control the weather. You can influence others through your words and actions, but ultimately, everyone has their own free will and their own path to walk. Detaching from your identity and self-image is another crucial aspect of mental freedom. Many people create anxiety by trying to maintain a certain image of themselves. They need to be seen as successful, smart, likable, or perfect. But when your peace depends on maintaining an image, you're constantly anxious about protecting that image. True detachment means being willing to be seen as imperfect, to make mistakes, to be misunderstood, and to let go of trying to control what others think of you. The ego mind is the part of you that creates attachment and therefore anxiety. The ego needs to be right, to be important, to be in control, to be safe. It creates stories about who you are, what you need, and what threatens you. But you are much more than your ego. You are the awareness behind the ego, the consciousness that can observe the ego's dramas without being caught up in them. When you learn to detach from ego-driven needs and fears, you find a deeper peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. Practicing non-resistance is a powerful form of detachment. Resistance to what's already happening creates enormous stress and anxiety. When something unwanted occurs, the mind immediately goes into resistance mode. This shouldn't be happening. This is wrong. I need to fix this immediately. But resistance to what's already here is like trying to push away a mountain. It's futile and exhausting. Non-resistance doesn't mean being passive. It means accepting what has already happened, so you can respond wisely rather than react from anxiety. Detachment from time is also liberating for the anxious mind. Anxiety often comes from being attached to things happening quickly or according to your timeline. You want the job offer now, the relationship to progress faster, the problem to be solved immediately. But life has its own timing, and fighting against that timing creates unnecessary suffering. When you can detach from your preferred timeline while still taking appropriate action, you find peace in the present moment, regardless of when things unfold. The practice of surrender is closely related to detachment. Surrender doesn't mean giving up or being passive. It means releasing the illusion of control and trusting that you can handle whatever comes. It means doing your best and then surrendering the outcome to forces beyond your control. This surrender actually empowers you because you stop wasting energy trying to control the uncontrollable and focus that energy on what you can actually influence. Detachment also involves letting go of the need for certainty. The anxious mind craves certainty and becomes distressed when faced with the unknown. But life is inherently uncertain, and trying to create artificial certainty through worry, over-planning, or control only creates more anxiety. When you can become comfortable with uncertainty, when you can embrace the unknown as an adventure rather than a threat, you free yourself from one of anxiety's primary fuel sources. The ultimate form of detachment is letting go of the attachment to being free from anxiety itself. Many people become anxious about their anxiety, creating a secondary layer of suffering. They need their anxiety to go away, to feel okay about themselves. But this creates a paradox. The more you need anxiety to disappear, the more anxious you become about having anxiety. True freedom comes when you can be okay with occasional anxiety, when you can accept it as a temporary visitor without making it mean something terrible about you or your life. Chapter 7. Creating inner safety and security. Much of anxiety stems from a fundamental feeling of unsafety in the world. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for threats. And if it doesn't feel safe, it will remain in a state of hypervigilance that manifests as anxiety. Creating inner safety isn't about making the world completely safe, which is impossible, but about developing an unshakable sense of security that comes from within rather than depending on external circumstances. Inner safety begins with self-trust. When you trust yourself to handle whatever comes your way, you feel less need to control external circumstances or worry about future scenarios. Self-trust means believing that you have the resilience, intelligence, and resourcefulness to navigate life's challenges. It means knowing that even if things don't go as planned, even if you make mistakes, even if you face difficulties, you will find a way to cope and even grow from the experience. Building self-trust requires looking at your track record honestly. Think about all the challenges you've already overcome in your life. Remember the times you thought you couldn't handle something, but you did. Recall the moments when you found strength you didn't know you had. Your anxiety makes you forget your own resilience and capabilities. But when you consciously remember your history of overcoming difficulties, you build evidence for your ability to handle future challenges. Creating inner safety also involves developing a strong relationship with yourself. This means being your own supportive friend rather than your own harsh critic. Many people with anxiety have an inner voice that's constantly critical, demanding, and threatening. This internal critic creates a sense of unsafety, even when external circumstances are fine. Learning to speak to yourself with kindness, encouragement, and compassion creates an internal environment of safety and support. Self-compassion is a crucial component of inner safety. When you make mistakes, face setbacks, or feel anxious, how do you talk to yourself? If you're harsh and critical, you're creating internal unsafety. But if you can respond to your own struggles with the same kindness you would offer a good friend, you create a secure internal base. Self-compassion doesn't mean making excuses or avoiding responsibility. It means treating yourself with basic human kindness while still working toward growth and improvement. Establishing healthy boundaries is another essential aspect of creating inner safety. Boundaries protect your energy, time, and emotional well-being. When you don't have clear boundaries, you're constantly vulnerable to other people's demands, moods, and emergencies. This creates chronic stress because you never feel like you have control over your own life. Healthy boundaries allow you to be generous and caring while still protecting your own needs and well-being. Physical safety practices also contribute to inner security. This includes taking care of your body through proper nutrition, adequate sleep, regular exercise, and avoiding substances that increase anxiety. It also means creating safe physical environments where you can relax and recharge. Your living space, work environment, and the places you spend time all affect your sense of safety and security. Financial security, while not always completely controllable, can significantly impact your sense of inner safety. This doesn't mean you need to be wealthy, but having some financial cushion and planning can reduce anxiety about survival needs. Creating a budget, building an emergency fund, and developing multiple income streams all contribute to a sense of security that allows your nervous system to relax. Spiritual or philosophical beliefs can also provide a foundation of inner safety. Whether you believe in a higher power, the fundamental goodness of the universe, or simply the resilience of the human spirit, having some framework that provides meaning and hope can be deeply comforting to an anxious mind. This doesn't require formal religion. It simply means having some beliefs that help you feel connected to something larger than your individual worries and fears. Developing practical life skills increases your confidence and sense of security. The more capable you feel in handling daily life challenges, the less anxious you'll be about facing new situations. This might include communication skills, problem-solving abilities, technical skills, or emotional intelligence. Every skill you develop is like adding another tool to your toolkit, making you feel more prepared for whatever life brings. Creating supportive relationships is crucial for inner security. Humans are social beings, and having people you can trust, rely on, and share your struggles with provides a safety net that reduces anxiety. This doesn't mean surrounding yourself with people who never challenge you, but rather building relationships with people who fundamentally care about your well-being and growth. Inner safety also comes from having meaning and purpose in your life. When you feel like your life has direction and significance, when you're engaged in work or activities that feel meaningful to you, you have a sense of groundedness that transcends daily worries. Purpose provides a larger context that makes individual anxieties feel less overwhelming and more manageable. The practice of self-reliance builds inner safety by proving to yourself that you can meet your own needs. This doesn't mean being isolated or never asking for help, but rather developing confidence in your ability to take care of yourself emotionally, practically, and spiritually. When you know you can rely on yourself, you feel less anxious about what others might do or not do. Creating inner safety is also about accepting that complete safety is an illusion while still taking reasonable precautions. Life involves risk, uncertainty, and the possibility of loss. But when you can accept this reality while still taking care of yourself and making wise choices, you develop a mature form of security that doesn't depend on controlling everything around you. Chapter 8. The practice of emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is the ability to experience emotions without being overwhelmed by them. It's the skill of feeling your feelings while still maintaining your center, your clarity, and your ability to respond wisely rather than react impulsively. For people with anxiety, learning emotional regulation is essential because anxiety is fundamentally an emotional experience that can hijack your entire system if you don't know how to work with it skillfully. Understanding the nature of emotions is the first step in learning to regulate them. Emotions are temporary experiences, like weather patterns moving through your inner sky. They arise, peak, and naturally subside if you don't interfere with the process. Anxiety becomes problematic when you either resist it so strongly that it gets stuck, or when you get so caught up in it that you lose perspective. Learning to let emotions flow through you naturally while maintaining your center is the key to emotional regulation. The RAIN technique is a powerful method for working with difficult emotions like anxiety. RAIN stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and non-attachment. First, you recognize what you're feeling without immediately trying to fix or change it. Then, you allow the emotion to be present without resistance. Next, you investigate the emotion with curiosity, noticing where you feel it in your body and what thoughts accompany it. Finally, you practice non-attachment, observing the emotion without being completely identified with it. Somatic awareness is crucial for emotional regulation because emotions are felt in the body as much as they're experienced mentally. Anxiety might show up as tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, tension in your shoulders, or a racing heart. Instead of trying to think your way out of these sensations, learning to breathe into them, relax around them, and let them be present without fighting them often allows them to release naturally. The window of tolerance is a concept that describes your optimal zone of arousal where you can think clearly and respond appropriately. When anxiety pushes you outside this window, you either become hyper-aroused, feeling overwhelmed and panicky, or hypo-aroused, feeling numb and disconnected. Learning to recognize when you're moving outside your window of tolerance and having techniques to bring yourself back is essential for emotional regulation. Grounding techniques help you return to your window of tolerance when emotions become overwhelming. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique is simple and effective. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This brings you back into your body and the present moment, interrupting the anxiety spiral and helping you regain your center. Breathing techniques are fundamental tools for emotional regulation. The physiological sigh, where you take a deep inhale followed by a second, smaller inhale, then a long exhale, is particularly effective for calming the nervous system. This pattern of breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system and helps shift you out of fight or flight mode into a calmer state. The practice of titration involves working with small amounts of difficult emotions rather than being overwhelmed by the full intensity. If you're feeling very anxious, instead of trying to process all of it at once, you can focus on just a small part of the sensation. Breathe with it, let it soften, and then gradually work with more. This prevents emotional overwhelm while still allowing you to process and release stuck emotions. Emotional granularity is the ability to distinguish between different emotional states with precision. Instead of just feeling anxious or bad, you might recognize that you're feeling specifically worried about a work presentation, disappointed about a cancelled plan, and excited about a future opportunity all at the same time. This precision helps you respond more appropriately to each specific emotion rather than being overwhelmed by a general sense of distress. The practice of pendulation involves consciously moving your attention between the challenging emotion and a resource or pleasant sensation. If you're feeling anxious, you might notice the anxiety in your chest and then shift your attention to the feeling of your feet firmly planted on the ground. Moving back and forth between distress and resource helps your nervous system learn that it can handle difficult emotions without being completely overwhelmed. Self-soothing skills are practical techniques you can use to comfort yourself when emotions feel intense. This might include taking a warm bath, listening to calming music, holding a soft object, using aromatherapy, or any other activity that helps your nervous system settle. Having a toolkit of self-soothing techniques means you don't have to depend on other people or external circumstances to help you regulate your emotions. Cognitive reappraisal is the practice of changing how you think about a situation to change how you feel about it. This isn't about positive thinking or denying reality. but about finding more balanced and realistic ways to interpret events. Instead of thinking, "This presentation will be a disaster," you might think, "This presentation is challenging, but I'm prepared and I can handle whatever happens." The practice of opposite action involves doing the opposite of what your emotion is urging you to do when that action wouldn't be helpful. If anxiety is telling you to avoid a social situation that's actually important to you, you might choose to attend anyway, but with extra self-care and support. This helps you build confidence in your ability to act wisely, even when you're feeling emotional. Distress tolerance skills help you get through difficult emotional periods without making them worse through impulsive actions. This might include distraction techniques, intense physical exercise to discharge emotional energy, or activities that provide a sense of accomplishment and mastery. The goal isn't to avoid emotions forever, but to have ways to cope with intense emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Chapter 9. Transforming Fear into Wisdom. Fear and anxiety often masquerade as protectors, but they can also be profound teachers if you know how to listen to their deeper messages. Instead of seeing fear as an enemy to be conquered, you can learn to transform it into wisdom that guides you toward greater authenticity, courage, and growth. This transformation requires shifting from being a victim of your fears to becoming a student of what they're trying to teach you. Every fear contains information about what matters to you. If you're afraid of public speaking, it might reveal how much you value others' respect and approval. If you're anxious about financial security, it shows how much you value stability and the ability to care for yourself and others. Instead of just trying to eliminate these fears, you can extract the wisdom they contain about your values, priorities, and areas where you might need to develop more skills or confidence. Fear often points toward your growing edge, the areas where you're ready to expand, but haven't yet built confidence. If you're afraid of starting your own business, it might indicate that entrepreneurship is actually calling to you. But you need to develop more skills, knowledge, or self-trust. When you can see fear as a compass pointing toward growth rather than a wall blocking your path, it becomes a valuable guide rather than an obstacle. The practice of fear inventory involves examining your fears with curiosity rather than judgment. Make a list of your most persistent fears, and for each one, ask yourself, what is this fear trying to protect me from? What does this fear say about what I value? If I weren't afraid of this, what would I do differently? What skills or knowledge would help me feel more confident in this area? This process transforms fear from a vague, overwhelming feeling into specific information you can act upon. Many fears are actually outdated protection mechanisms that served you at one time but are no longer helpful. Perhaps you developed social anxiety as a child to protect yourself from rejection or criticism. But now this same protection is preventing you from forming meaningful relationships or advancing in your career. Learning to thank these old protections for their service, while consciously choosing new, more appropriate responses, is part of transforming fear into wisdom. Fear often reveals limiting beliefs that need to be examined and updated. If you're afraid of failure, you might discover underlying beliefs like, "I'm only valuable if I succeed," or "making mistakes means I'm incompetent." When you can identify and question these limiting beliefs, you can replace them with more empowering and realistic beliefs that support your growth rather than holding you back. The practice of worst-case scenario planning can transform anxiety-provoking fears into practical wisdom. Instead of just worrying vaguely about what might go wrong, You can consciously explore the worst-case scenario, make practical plans for how you would handle it, and often discover that even the worst case wouldn't be as catastrophic as your anxious mind believes. This planning reduces anxiety while increasing your actual preparedness and confidence. Fear can also be a teacher about boundaries and self-care. If you're anxious about saying no to requests, your fear might be teaching you about the importance of protecting your time and energy. If you're afraid of conflict, your fear might be pointing toward the need to develop better communication skills and the courage to stand up for your values. When you can see fear as information about what you need rather than proof of your weakness, it becomes a valuable ally. Transforming fear into courage is an ongoing practice rather than a one-time achievement. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and taking wise action anyway. Every time you feel afraid but take a step forward, you're building your courage muscle. You're proving to yourself that you can handle uncertainty, discomfort, and the possibility of failure or rejection. The practice of gradual exposure can help you transform specific fears into confidence and wisdom. Instead of trying to overcome a fear all at once, you can expose yourself to increasingly challenging versions of what you're afraid of, building confidence gradually. If you're afraid of public speaking, you might start by speaking up more in small meetings, then giving presentations to colleagues, then speaking to larger groups, each step building on the confidence gained from the previous one. Fear can also teach you about the difference between real dangers that require caution and imaginary dangers created by your mind. Learning to distinguish between rational fears that serve your safety and irrational fears that limit your growth is a crucial life skill. This discernment allows you to take appropriate precautions when needed while not being paralyzed by unfounded worries. The shadow work aspect of fear transformation involves examining the parts of yourself that you've rejected or hidden out of fear. Often we're afraid of being seen as too ambitious, too sensitive, too different, or too powerful. But these rejected aspects often contain gifts and strengths that we need to reclaim. Transforming fear means integrating these shadow aspects and embracing more of who you truly are. Fear of death, whether conscious or unconscious, underlies many other fears and anxieties. When you can make peace with the reality of mortality, many smaller fears lose their power over you. This doesn't mean becoming morbid or depressed, but rather accepting death as a natural part of life that gives meaning and urgency to how you choose to live. This acceptance can free you to take meaningful risks and live more authentically. The transformation of fear into wisdom is ultimately about developing trust in life itself and in your ability to navigate whatever comes your way. This trust isn't naive optimism that nothing bad will ever happen, but rather a mature confidence that you can handle life's challenges with grace, learn from difficulties, and find meaning and growth even in adversity. This trust allows you to live more openly and courageously, using fear as a guide rather than being controlled by it. Chapter 10. Building Unshakable Mental Resilience. Mental resilience is your ability to bounce back from adversity, adapt to change, and maintain your inner stability even when life becomes challenging. It's not about avoiding difficulties or pretending everything is fine when it's not. True resilience is about developing the mental, emotional, and spiritual strength to navigate life's inevitable ups and downs while maintaining your sense of purpose, hope, and inner peace. Resilience begins with accepting that challenges, setbacks, and difficulties are a natural part of life, rather than signs that something is wrong with you or your life. Many people increase their suffering by believing that life should be easy, that they should be able to avoid major problems, or that having difficulties means they're doing something wrong. But resilient people understand that challenges are inevitable and often necessary for growth and development. One of the foundations of resilience is developing what psychologists call a growth mindset, rather than a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset believes that your abilities, intelligence, and character are static traits that can't be changed. This creates anxiety because every challenge becomes a test of your fixed worth. A growth mindset, on the other hand, believes that abilities can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence. This mindset makes challenges feel like opportunities for growth rather than threats to your identity. Building resilience requires developing multiple sources of strength and support, rather than depending on just one area of your life for your sense of security and identity. If your entire sense of worth depends on your career success, you'll be devastated by professional setbacks. If your happiness depends entirely on one relationship, you'll be vulnerable when that relationship faces difficulties. Resilient people cultivate diverse sources of meaning, connection, and fulfillment, so that challenges in one area don't destroy their overall well-being. Mental flexibility is a crucial component of resilience. This means being able to adapt your strategies, beliefs, and approaches when circumstances change. Rigid thinking increases anxiety because it assumes things should always work the same way. Flexible thinking allows you to adjust your expectations and methods based on new information and changing circumstances. This flexibility reduces anxiety because you're prepared to adapt, rather than demanding that life conform to your fixed expectations. The practice of reframing challenges as opportunities is central to building resilience. This doesn't mean pretending that difficulties aren't real or painful, but rather looking for the potential gifts, lessons, or growth opportunities within challenging situations. Maybe a job loss forces you to explore new career directions you wouldn't have considered otherwise. Maybe a health challenge teaches you to prioritize self-care and appreciate your body in new ways. Maybe a relationship ending allows you to develop a stronger relationship with yourself. Building resilience also involves developing what researchers call emotional agility. This is the ability to navigate your emotions in a healthy way, feeling them fully without being overwhelmed by them or trying to control them completely. Emotionally agile people can acknowledge difficult emotions without being defined by them, and they can use emotional information to guide their actions without being controlled by emotional impulses. Having a sense of purpose and meaning is one of the strongest predictors of resilience. When you feel like your life has direction and significance, you can endure temporary setbacks because you're connected to something larger than immediate circumstances. This purpose doesn't have to be grandiose or world-changing. It might be as simple as being a good parent, contributing to your community, or developing your talents and abilities. Social connections are crucial for resilience, but it's the quality rather than quantity of relationships that matters most. Having even one or two people who truly understand you, accept you as you are, and support you through difficulties can make an enormous difference in your ability to handle challenges. These relationships provide perspective, practical support, and the reminder that you're not alone in facing life's difficulties. Self-compassion is a powerful resilience builder because it allows you to maintain your inner strength even when you make mistakes, face setbacks, or struggle with challenges. People who are harsh and critical with themselves deplete their own resources and make it harder to bounce back from difficulties. But when you can treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer a good friend, you maintain the inner resources needed for resilience and recovery. Physical resilience supports mental resilience because your mind and body are interconnected systems. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, proper nutrition, and stress management practices all contribute to your overall capacity to handle challenges. When your body is strong and healthy, your mind has more resources available for dealing with mental and emotional difficulties. The practice of building small resiliences prepares you for larger challenges. Every time you handle a minor setback with grace, overcome a small fear, or persist through a temporary difficulty, you're building evidence of your resilience and developing the skills you'll need for bigger challenges. These small victories accumulate into a sense of confidence and capability that serves you well when major difficulties arise. Learning from adversity is what transforms challenging experiences into wisdom and strength. Resilient people don't just survive difficulties, they extract meaning, insights, and growth from them. They ask themselves what they learned about themselves, what strengths they discovered, what skills they developed, and how they can use this experience to help themselves or others in the future. Building resilience also involves developing what Viktor Frankl called responsibility. The ability to choose your response to any situation regardless of the circumstances. You can't always control what happens to you, but you always have some choice in how you respond. This sense of choice and agency is fundamental to resilience because it reminds you that you have power even in difficult situations. Chapter 11. Advanced Visualization for Mental Mastery. Visualization is far more than just positive thinking or wishful imagination. It's a powerful neurological tool that can literally rewire your brain to experience calm instead of anxiety. When you visualize with the right techniques, you're activating the same neural networks that would fire if you were actually experiencing the calm, confident state you're imagining. This isn't metaphysical theory. It's neuroscience in action. The key to effective visualization for anxiety mastery lies in understanding that your brain cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. When you visualize yourself handling a challenging situation with complete calm and confidence, your brain begins to encode this as an actual memory. You're literally programming new neural pathways that support calm responses rather than anxious reactions. Most people make the mistake of trying to visualize being anxiety-free, which actually reinforces the focus on anxiety. Instead, focus your visualization on the specific state you want to cultivate. See yourself feeling grounded, centered, and naturally confident. Feel the sensations in your body of being completely at ease. Notice how you breathe when you're calm, how you carry yourself when you feel secure, how you speak when you're confident. The most powerful visualizations engage all of your senses, not just your visual imagination. When you're creating your calm state in your mind, don't just see it. Feel it in your body. Hear the sounds of your calm breathing. Smell the environment around you. Even taste the relaxation in your mouth. The more sensory detail you include, the more real the experience becomes to your nervous system. Advanced visualization also involves creating what neuroscientists call future memories. This means visualizing yourself successfully handling anxiety-provoking situations so vividly and repeatedly that your brain begins to treat these visualized experiences as actual memories of success. When you encounter similar situations in real life, your brain references these positive memories instead of defaulting to anxiety patterns. One particularly effective technique is called the sanctuary visualization. In your mind, create a perfect place of safety and calm. This might be a beautiful natural setting, a cozy room, or even an imaginary space that feels completely secure. Make this place incredibly detailed and real in your imagination. Then practice going to this sanctuary in your mind whenever you feel anxiety beginning to build. Your brain will begin to associate this mental space with immediate calm and relaxation. The rehearsal visualization technique involves mentally practicing successful outcomes for specific anxiety-provoking situations. If you have a job interview coming up, don't just visualize getting the job. Visualize the entire experience of feeling calm, confident, and authentic during the interview. See yourself walking in with confidence, breathing easily, speaking clearly, and connecting genuinely with the interviewer. Feel the sensations of being completely at ease in your body. Transformation visualization goes deeper by helping you visualize yourself as someone who naturally embodies calm and confidence. Instead of seeing calm as something you achieve occasionally, visualize it as your natural state. See yourself as someone who meets life's challenges with grace, who breathes easily in stressful situations, who naturally maintains perspective during difficulties. This type of visualization begins to shift your core identity from someone who struggles with anxiety to someone who naturally embodies peace. The technique of reverse visualization can be surprisingly powerful for anxiety mastery. Instead of visualizing the positive outcome, you visualize yourself handling the worst-case scenario with complete calm and wisdom. This removes the fear of the unknown by showing your mind that even if things don't go perfectly, you can handle it with grace. Paradoxically, this often makes the worst-case scenario feel less threatening and therefore less likely to create anxiety. Energy visualization involves working with the subtle sensations and energy patterns in your body during visualization. As you visualize calm states, pay attention to how energy moves through your system. Notice areas where you feel expansion, warmth, or flowing sensations. Learn to direct this calm energy to areas of your body that tend to hold tension or anxiety. This creates a bridge between mental visualization and somatic healing. The practice of embodied visualization means not just seeing yourself as calm, but literally feeling the physical sensations of calmness while you visualize. Let your shoulders drop, soften your facial muscles, slow your breathing, and allow your entire body to settle into the calm state you're visualizing. This integration of mental imagery with physical embodiment creates much more powerful and lasting changes in your nervous system. Timeline visualization is a powerful technique for healing anxiety patterns that stem from past experiences. Visualize your life as a timeline stretching from past to future. Go back to earlier versions of yourself who first developed anxiety patterns, and in your visualization, offer them comfort, wisdom, and the calm presence they needed. Then visualize this healing energy flowing forward through your timeline, transforming how you experience similar situations now and in the future. Advanced practitioners use visualization to work with the archetypal energies that represent different aspects of inner strength. You might visualize yourself embodying the energy of a wise elder who has seen many challenges and remained unshaken, or a peaceful warrior who meets difficulties with courage and calm, or a nurturing parent who provides safety and comfort to the anxious parts of yourself. These archetypal visualizations tap into deeper sources of strength and wisdom. The practice of environmental visualization involves creating mental images of spaces and environments that naturally support calm states. You might visualize yourself in a peaceful forest where every breath brings deeper relaxation, or by a calm lake where the stillness of the water reflects your inner peace, or in a comfortable room filled with warm light and the energy of safety. These environmental visualizations can be instantly accessed whenever you need to shift your state. Cellular visualization takes the practice even deeper by imagining calm energy flowing into every cell of your body. Visualize your nervous system relaxing at the cellular level. See stress hormones being replaced by calm-inducing neurotransmitters. Imagine your DNA itself encoding patterns of peace and resilience. This level of visualization works with the deepest levels of your biological system to create lasting transformation. The integration of visualization with affirmation creates a powerful synergy for rewiring anxious patterns. As you visualize your calm, confident state, repeat affirmations that support this new identity. I am naturally calm and centered. I handle life's challenges with grace and wisdom. Peace is my natural state. The combination of vivid imagery with affirming language accelerates the rewiring process. Visualization can also be used preventatively by imagining yourself maintaining calm in situations that haven't occurred yet but that you know trigger anxiety for you. By repeatedly visualizing successful, calm responses to these triggers, you're essentially immunizing yourself against future anxiety by creating neural patterns of calm response before you need them. Chapter 12. The Science of Nervous System Regulation. Your nervous system is the master control center for your anxiety response, and understanding how to regulate it consciously is perhaps the most powerful skill you can develop for lasting peace of mind. Most people try to think their way out of anxiety, but anxiety lives in your nervous system, not just in your thoughts. When you learn to regulate your autonomic nervous system, you gain control over anxiety at its source. The autonomic nervous system has two main branches that work in opposition to each other. The sympathetic nervous system is your accelerator. It activates when you perceive threat or danger, preparing your body for fight, flight, or freeze responses. The parasympathetic nervous system is your brake. It activates rest, digest, and recovery processes. Anxiety occurs when your sympathetic system is chronically activated, and your parasympathetic system isn't able to bring you back to baseline calm. Understanding polyvagal theory revolutionizes how you work with anxiety because it reveals that you actually have 3 states of nervous system activation, not just 2. The ventral vagal state is your zone of safety and social connection. When this system is active, you feel calm, open, and able to connect with others easily. The sympathetic state is your mobilization response, fight or flight. The dorsal vagal state is your shutdown response, when threat feels overwhelming. This system activates to help you survive through disconnection and numbness. Most anxiety occurs when you're stuck in sympathetic activation or cycling between sympathetic and dorsal states without accessing the ventral vagal state of safety and connection. Learning to consciously activate your ventral vagal system is the key to lasting anxiety relief, because it's the only state where you can think clearly, feel connected, and access your natural wisdom and problem-solving abilities. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in your body, connecting your brain to your heart, lungs, and digestive system. This nerve is essentially the communication highway between your brain and body, and it's the primary pathway through which you can consciously influence your nervous system state. Stimulating the vagus nerve activates parasympathetic responses and helps shift you out of anxiety states into calm states. Breath is the most accessible tool for nervous system regulation because it's the only function that's both automatic and under conscious control. Different breathing patterns send different signals to your nervous system. Short, shallow breathing from your chest signals danger to your brain and maintains sympathetic activation. Long, slow breathing from your diaphragm activates the parasympathetic system and signals safety to your brain. The physiological sigh is one of the most powerful breathing techniques for immediate nervous system regulation. Take a normal inhale through your nose. Then take a second, smaller inhale on top of the first one, followed by a long, slow exhale through your mouth. This specific pattern of breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system more effectively than simple deep breathing because it maximizes the calming signals sent to your brain. Heart rate variability is another key factor in nervous system regulation. When you're anxious, your heart rate becomes rigid and predictable. But when you're calm and resilient, your heart rate varies naturally in response to your breathing and other factors. You can improve your heart rate variability by practicing coherent breathing. Breathing at a rate of about 5 breaths per minute, which synchronizes your heart rate with your breathing rhythm. Cold exposure is a powerful tool for building nervous system resilience because it trains your system to stay calm under stress. When you expose yourself to cold water or air, your sympathetic nervous system activates. But if you can maintain slow, controlled breathing and mental calm during the exposure, you're training your system to remain regulated even when activated. This builds confidence in your ability to handle stress and reduces overall anxiety sensitivity. The co-regulation principle explains why being around calm, regulated people helps you feel calmer, while being around anxious people can increase your anxiety. Your nervous systems actually synchronize with the people around you through unconscious cues like breathing patterns, heart rate, and micro-expressions. Understanding this can help you choose your social environment more consciously and also learn to be a regulating presence for others. Movement is essential for nervous system health because your system needs to complete the stress response cycle through physical discharge. When you're anxious, stress hormones and nervous energy build up in your system, and they need to be moved through your body to be released. This doesn't require intense exercise. Gentle shaking, stretching, walking, or dancing can all help discharge excess activation and return your system to baseline calm. The window of tolerance concept describes the zone where your nervous system can handle stress without becoming overwhelmed or shutting down. When you're within your window of tolerance, you can think clearly, feel your emotions without being overwhelmed, and respond appropriately to situations. Learning to recognize when you're moving outside this window and having techniques to return to it is crucial for managing anxiety. Progressive muscle relaxation works directly with your nervous system by teaching your body the difference between tension and relaxation. When you consciously tense and then release muscle groups throughout your body, you're not just relaxing your muscles, You're sending signals through your nervous system that it's safe to let go and relax. This practice helps reset your baseline level of physical tension. Sound and vibration can be powerful tools for nervous system regulation because your vagus nerve responds to certain frequencies and vibrations. Humming, singing, chanting, or listening to specific types of music can activate parasympathetic responses. The vibration of humming, in particular, stimulates the vagus nerve directly and can quickly shift your nervous system state from activation to calm. Touch and pressure can also regulate your nervous system through what's called the mammalian calming response. Gentle, slow touch, or deep pressure activates your parasympathetic system, which is why activities like massage, weighted blankets, or even self-touch, like placing your hand on your heart, can be immediately calming. Understanding how to use touch as a nervous system regulation tool gives you another accessible way to shift your state. Temperature regulation affects your nervous system state because your body's thermoregulation is closely connected to your autonomic nervous system. Being too hot can increase anxiety and activation, while being too cold can trigger shutdown responses. Finding your optimal temperature range and using warmth or coolness strategically can support nervous system regulation. The practice of nervous system tracking involves developing awareness of your internal state throughout the day. This means noticing early signs of activation like increased heart rate, shallow breathing, or muscle tension, and also noticing signs of safety and calm, like deeper breathing, relaxed muscles, and a sense of ease. This awareness allows you to intervene early with regulation techniques before anxiety builds to overwhelming levels. Social connection is one of the most powerful nervous system regulators because humans are wired for co-regulation. Safe, attuned relationships literally help regulate your nervous system through unconscious synchronization of breathing, heart rate, and other physiological functions. This is why isolation often increases anxiety, while healthy connection naturally decreases it. Chapter 13. Mastering the Inner Dialogue. The conversation you have with yourself in your mind is perhaps the most influential factor in determining whether you experience peace or anxiety throughout your day. Most people are completely unconscious of their inner dialogue, unaware that they're running a constant stream of mental commentary that shapes their emotional state, their decisions, and their entire experience of life. Mastering this inner conversation is essential for freeing yourself from anxiety. Your inner dialogue is like having a radio playing in the background of your mind, except you get to choose the station. Most anxious people have tuned into what could be called anxiety radio, a station that plays constant worry, worst-case scenarios, self-criticism, and fearful predictions. But you can learn to consciously change the channel to a station that broadcasts calm, wisdom, encouragement, and realistic perspectives. The first step in mastering your inner dialogue is becoming aware of it. Many people are so identified with their thoughts that they don't realize they're thinking. They just experience a constant stream of mental activity without recognizing it as optional. Start paying attention to the voice in your head. Notice the tone it uses, the topics it focuses on, the judgments it makes. This awareness alone begins to create some space between you and your thoughts. Most inner dialogues are heavily influenced by internalized voices from your past. Parents, teachers, critics, or society in general. You might recognize your mother's worried voice warning you about dangers, your father's critical voice pointing out your flaws, or a teacher's harsh voice telling you "You're not good enough." These internalized voices often masquerade as your own thoughts, but they're actually old programming that you can consciously update. The anxious inner dialogue tends to focus on three main themes: catastrophizing about the future, ruminating about the past, and criticizing yourself in the present. It asks questions like, what if something terrible happens? Why did I do that stupid thing? And what's wrong with me? These patterns of thinking maintain and amplify anxiety by keeping your mind focused on problems, threats, and inadequacies. Learning to redirect your inner dialogue requires conscious effort and practice, like learning to play a new instrument. When you notice anxious thoughts arising, you can consciously choose to shift the conversation. Instead of, "What if I fail?" you might think, "I'm prepared, and I can handle whatever happens." Instead of, "I always mess things up," you might think, "I'm learning and growing from this experience." The quality of questions you ask yourself internally has enormous power over your emotional state. Anxious thinking asks disempowering questions that focus on problems and threats. Wise thinking asks empowering questions that focus on solutions and possibilities. Instead of, "Why does this always happen to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this situation?" Instead of, "What if it doesn't work out?" ask, "How can I best prepare?" and then trust the process. Developing a compassionate inner voice is crucial for anxiety mastery. Many people speak to themselves more harshly than they would ever speak to their worst enemy. This internal harshness creates a state of chronic stress and self-attack that fuels anxiety. Learning to speak to yourself with the same kindness and encouragement you would offer a dear friend creates an internal environment of safety and support. The practice of conscious self-talk involves deliberately choosing thoughts that support your well-being rather than automatically believing whatever thoughts arise. This doesn't mean lying to yourself or denying reality, but rather choosing thoughts that are both true and helpful. Instead of, "I can't handle this," you might choose, "This is challenging, but I have resources and I can learn as I go." Reframing techniques help you find more balanced and realistic ways to interpret situations. The anxious mind tends to interpret ambiguous situations in the most threatening way possible, while the calm mind looks for multiple possible interpretations. If someone doesn't return your text message, instead of immediately thinking, "They must be angry at me," you could think, "They might be busy, or they might not have seen it yet." The inner critic is often the loudest voice in the anxious inner dialogue, constantly pointing out your flaws, mistakes, and inadequacies. Learning to recognize this voice and consciously choose not to engage with it is liberating. You can thank your inner critic for trying to protect you by pointing out potential problems, but let it know that its services are no longer needed in the same way they might have been when you were younger. Developing an inner wise voice or inner mentor can transform your relationship with challenging situations. This voice speaks from a place of maturity, compassion, and perspective. It might sound like a wise grandparent, a trusted teacher, or simply your own voice, speaking from your highest wisdom. This voice can offer comfort during difficult times, guidance when you're unsure what to do, and perspective when you're caught up in temporary problems. The practice of thought stopping can interrupt repetitive, anxious thinking patterns. When you notice your mind spinning in familiar, anxious loops, you can mentally say, "Stop," or imagine a big red stop sign. Then consciously redirect your attention to something else. This technique works best when combined with immediately focusing on something positive or engaging, rather than just trying to create a mental vacuum. Internal boundaries are as important as external boundaries for mental health. This means learning to say no to thoughts that don't serve you, just as you would learn to say no to people or activities that don't serve you. You don't have to believe every thought that arises in your mind, and you don't have to follow every mental suggestion your anxious mind offers. The practice of mental rehearsal involves using your inner dialogue to prepare for challenging situations in a positive way. Instead of rehearsing all the things that could go wrong, you can mentally rehearse handling situations with calm, confidence, and skill. This positive mental rehearsal literally programs your nervous system for success and reduces anxiety about upcoming challenges. Developing multiple perspectives is a powerful antidote to the tunnel vision that anxiety creates. When you're anxious, you tend to see situations from only one angle, usually the most threatening one. But every situation can be viewed from multiple perspectives. You can consciously practice asking yourself, how else could I look at this situation? What would someone I admire think about this? How will this matter in 5 years? The inner dialogue of gratitude is one of the most powerful tools for shifting from anxiety to peace. Regularly directing your inner conversation toward appreciation for what's going well in your life, what you've learned from challenges, and what you have to look forward to literally rewires your brain for positivity. This doesn't mean ignoring problems, but rather balancing problem awareness with appreciation for the good in your life. Creating affirmations that feel authentic and believable can support a more positive inner dialogue. Instead of affirmations that feel fake or unrealistic, create statements that acknowledge your current reality while pointing toward growth. Something like, I am learning to handle challenges with more calm and wisdom, feels more authentic than I never feel anxious, and is more likely to be accepted by your unconscious mind. The practice of internal cheerleading involves consciously encouraging yourself the way a good coach would encourage an athlete. This means acknowledging your efforts, celebrating small victories, offering comfort during setbacks, and maintaining belief in your ability to grow and improve. This supportive internal voice becomes a source of strength that you can access anytime, anywhere. Chapter 14. Creating lasting transformation. Temporary relief from anxiety feels good in the moment, but lasting transformation means fundamentally changing your relationship with fear, uncertainty, and challenge so that anxiety no longer has the same power over your life. This level of change requires more than just techniques and strategies. It requires a shift in your core beliefs, identity, and approach to life itself. True transformation begins with the recognition that anxiety is not your enemy, but rather a misguided protector that's trying to keep you safe using outdated methods. When you can see anxiety as a part of your internal system that means well but needs to be retrained, you can work with it more skillfully rather than fighting against it. This shift from resistance to cooperation is foundational to lasting change. Identity transformation is perhaps the most powerful level of change because your identity determines your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors more than any external technique. If you identify as someone who struggles with anxiety, you'll unconsciously maintain patterns that confirm this identity. But if you begin to see yourself as someone who is learning to master their inner world, you'll naturally align with thoughts and behaviors that support this new identity. The process of becoming someone who naturally embodies calm requires consistent practice over time, but not in the way most people think. It's not about practicing techniques when you're anxious. It's about practicing being calm when you're already calm, so that calm becomes your default state rather than something you have to achieve. This means consciously cultivating and appreciating moments of peace throughout your day. Lasting transformation also requires healing the underlying wounds and traumas that created your anxiety patterns in the first place. Many anxiety patterns developed as intelligent adaptations to early life experiences where you genuinely needed to be hyper-vigilant or protective. Acknowledging these patterns with compassion while consciously choosing new responses appropriate to your current life is essential for deep healing. The practice of reparenting yourself involves giving yourself the safety, encouragement, and unconditional love that you needed as a child and that supports your healing now. This might mean speaking to yourself with kindness when you make mistakes, setting appropriate boundaries to protect your energy, or providing comfort and reassurance during difficult times. You become the loving parent to yourself that your inner child still needs. Environmental design plays a crucial role in lasting transformation because your environment shapes your internal state more than most people realize. Creating physical spaces that support calm, surrounding yourself with people who are grounded and positive, and curating your information diet to include more inspiring and peaceful content all support your transformation at an unconscious level. The integration of somatic practices is essential for lasting change because anxiety lives in your body as much as your mind. Practices like yoga, tai chi, dance, massage, or simply spending time in nature help your nervous system remember its natural capacity for calm and regulation. These practices work at a level deeper than thought, helping to release stored stress and tension from your cellular memory. Spiritual or philosophical development often accompanies deep anxiety transformation because working with fear ultimately leads to questions about meaning, purpose, and your relationship to life itself. This doesn't necessarily mean formal religion, but rather developing some sense of connection to something larger than your individual concerns. Whether that's nature, humanity, creativity, or transcendent values like love and wisdom. The cultivation of what could be called emotional immune system strength makes you naturally more resilient to anxiety triggers. Just as physical immune system strength helps you resist illness, emotional immune system strength helps you maintain your center even when exposed to stress, conflict, or uncertainty. This strength develops through gradually exposing yourself to manageable challenges while maintaining your inner stability. Neuroplasticity research shows that your brain continues to change throughout your life based on your experiences and mental habits. This means that every time you choose calm over anxiety, every time you respond to challenge with wisdom instead of fear, you're literally rewiring your brain to support your new way of being. Consistency is more important than perfection in this rewiring process. The development of metacognitive awareness, awareness of your own thinking processes, is crucial for lasting transformation. This means not just noticing when you're thinking anxious thoughts, but understanding the deeper patterns and triggers that create those thoughts. With this level of awareness, you can intervene at the source, rather than just managing symptoms. Creating rituals and routines that support your transformed state helps anchor your new way of being into your daily life. This might include morning practices that set a calm tone for your day, evening practices that help you process and release stress, or weekly practices that help you maintain perspective and connection to what matters most to you. The practice of conscious choice-making means regularly asking yourself whether your decisions are coming from anxiety or from wisdom. Anxiety-driven choices are usually based on avoiding discomfort, seeking approval, or trying to control outcomes. Wisdom-driven choices are based on your values, your growth, and what serves your highest good, even if it involves some temporary discomfort. Building what could be called wisdom reserves involves consciously cultivating insight, perspective, and inner resources during calm times, so they're available during challenging times. This might involve reading philosophical or spiritual texts, spending time in reflection or meditation, learning from the experiences of wise people, or simply taking time to extract lessons and meaning from your own life experiences. The transformation from anxiety to peace is ultimately a transformation from separation to connection. Connection to yourself, to others, to your purpose, and to life itself. Anxiety often stems from feeling isolated, misunderstood, or cut off from sources of meaning and support. True transformation involves rebuilding these connections in healthy, sustainable ways. Lasting transformation also requires accepting that you will still experience anxiety sometimes, but your relationship to it will be completely different. Instead of being overwhelmed by anxiety, you'll be able to observe it, learn from it, and respond to it skillfully. Anxiety may still arise, but it no longer controls your life or defines your identity. The final stage of transformation involves becoming a source of calm and wisdom for others. When you've truly mastered your own inner world, you naturally become someone who helps others feel more peaceful and grounded. This isn't about giving advice or trying to fix people, but simply embodying the calm, centered presence that reminds others of their own capacity for peace. Chapter 15. Living as your authentic self. The ultimate resolution of chronic anxiety often comes not from learning to manage fear, but from discovering and living as your authentic self. Much anxiety stems from the exhausting effort of trying to be someone you're not, constantly monitoring yourself to make sure you're meeting external expectations while suppressing parts of yourself that feel unacceptable or unsafe to express. Authenticity doesn't mean being completely unfiltered or acting on every impulse. True authenticity is about aligning your external expression with your internal truth while still being considerate of others and appropriate to the situation. It's about having the courage to be genuine rather than performing a version of yourself that you think others want to see. Most people develop a false self early in life as a way to gain love, approval, and safety. You learn to emphasize certain parts of your personality while hiding others based on what got positive responses from parents, teachers, and peers. This false self might have served you well as a child, but maintaining it as an adult requires enormous energy and creates constant anxiety about being discovered or rejected. The false self operates like a sophisticated actor who has studied their role so well that they've forgotten who they really are beneath the performance. This actor knows exactly what expressions to wear, what words to say, and what reactions to display to get the desired response from any audience. But the constant performance is exhausting because it requires vigilant attention to external feedback while completely ignoring internal guidance and authentic impulses. Understanding the specific ways your false self manifests is crucial for reclaiming authenticity. Perhaps you're the people pleaser who automatically agrees with others even when you disagree internally. Maybe you're the perfectionist who presents a flawless image while hiding your struggles and vulnerabilities. Or you might be the chameleon who adapts so completely to different groups that you've lost touch with your own preferences and opinions. The process of reclaiming your authentic self often begins with identifying the masks you wear in different situations. Notice how you act differently at work than at home, with friends than with family, with people you want to impress versus people you feel comfortable with. While some adaptability is natural and healthy, significant disconnection from your core self in different contexts is a sign that you're performing rather than being authentic. The energy cost of maintaining these different personas is enormous and often shows up as chronic fatigue, anxiety, or depression. When you're constantly code-switching between different versions of yourself, you never get to rest in your natural state. It's like being a translator who must constantly convert between languages. Eventually, you lose fluency in your native tongue. Fear of rejection is often the biggest obstacle to authentic expression because your false self was created specifically to avoid rejection. But living inauthentically guarantees a particular kind of rejection. You reject yourself by not allowing your true nature to be seen or expressed. The irony is that the very strategies you use to avoid rejection often create the disconnection and emptiness that fuel anxiety. The journey toward authenticity often begins with what could be called authenticity experiments, small, low-risk ways of expressing more of your true nature. This might mean sharing an opinion that's genuinely yours rather than what you think others want to hear. It might mean wearing clothes that express your actual style rather than what you think looks appropriate. It might mean admitting when you don't know something instead of pretending to understand. These small experiments in authenticity can feel terrifying at first because you're stepping outside the safety of your familiar persona. You might notice increased anxiety as you prepare to be more genuine, but this anxiety is actually a sign that you're moving in the right direction. It's the fear of your false self losing control and the excitement of your true self finally getting to emerge. Authentic self-expression requires developing tolerance for other people's reactions and opinions. Not everyone will understand you, appreciate you, or approve of your authentic self. And that's not only okay, it's necessary. Trying to be all things to all people is impossible and exhausting. When you can accept that some people won't resonate with the real you, you free yourself to attract the relationships and opportunities that truly align with who you are. One of the most profound realizations in the journey toward authenticity is understanding that the right people for you will be attracted to your genuine self, not your performed self. When you attract people and opportunities based on a false persona, you end up in relationships and situations that require you to maintain that persona indefinitely. But when you attract people based on your authentic nature, you can relax into being yourself. The practice of values clarification helps you distinguish between what you actually believe and value versus what you've been told you should believe and value. Many anxious people carry values and goals that aren't truly their own, which creates internal conflict and tension. When your actions align with your genuine values rather than borrowed or imposed values, you experience a natural sense of integrity and ease. This values clarification process often involves examining the beliefs you inherited from your family, culture, or society, and asking whether they actually resonate with your inner truth. You might discover that you've been pursuing career goals that your parents valued, but that don't fulfill you, or following lifestyle choices that your culture promotes, but that don't match your natural temperament. Emotional authenticity involves allowing yourself to feel and express the full range of human emotions rather than only the ones deemed acceptable by your family or culture. Many people were taught that certain emotions like anger, sadness, or even joy were inappropriate or dangerous to express. But suppressing natural emotional responses requires enormous energy and creates anxiety about these forbidden feelings arising. Learning to feel and express emotions authentically doesn't mean being emotionally uncontrolled or inappropriate. It means honoring your emotional truth while expressing it in ways that are respectful and constructive. This might mean learning to say, "I'm feeling frustrated about this situation," instead of pretending everything is fine, or allowing yourself to feel excited about good news, instead of downplaying your joy to avoid seeming boastful. Your authentic gifts and talents often point toward your life purpose and the unique contribution you're here to make. Anxiety sometimes arises when you're not using your natural abilities or when you're trying to force yourself into roles that don't fit your authentic nature. Discovering and expressing your gifts doesn't just reduce anxiety, it creates a sense of meaning and fulfillment that naturally supports mental and emotional well-being. The process of discovering your authentic gifts requires attention to what energizes you versus what drains you, what comes easily versus what feels forced, and what you're naturally curious about versus what you think you should be interested in. Your gifts might be completely different from what your family or society values, but honoring them is essential for your psychological well-being. The courage to disappoint others is essential for authentic living, because you cannot please everyone and still remain true to yourself. This doesn't mean being selfish or inconsiderate, but rather accepting that sometimes your authentic choices will conflict with what others want from you. Learning to disappoint others with kindness while still honoring your own truth is a crucial life skill. This courage develops gradually as you practice small acts of authentic choice-making and discover that you can survive other people's disappointment or disapproval. You learn that other people's reactions to your authenticity are more about them than about you, and that trying to manage their emotions by suppressing your authenticity doesn't actually serve anyone in the long run. Authentic communication involves expressing your thoughts, feelings, and needs honestly while still being respectful and considerate. Many anxious people avoid authentic communication because they fear conflict or rejection. But indirect or dishonest communication creates more problems than it solves. When you can express yourself authentically, you reduce the anxiety that comes from constantly monitoring and censoring yourself. Learning authentic communication often involves developing comfort with healthy conflict. Many people avoid authenticity because they believe it will create conflict. But actually, authentic communication often prevents the kind of resentment and misunderstanding that create deeper conflicts later. When you can express your needs and boundaries clearly and kindly, you create the conditions for genuine understanding and respect. The relationship between authenticity and boundaries is crucial because boundaries protect your authentic self from being overwhelmed or compromised by external pressures. When you have clear boundaries about what you will and won't accept, what you can and can't give, and what aligns or doesn't align with your values, you create space for your authentic nature to flourish. Boundaries are not walls built to keep people out, but rather clear guidelines that help you engage with others from your authentic center, rather than from people-pleasing or fear-based patterns. When you have healthy boundaries, you can be more generous and loving because you're not constantly worried about being taken advantage of or losing yourself in others' demands. Self-acceptance is the foundation of authentic living because you cannot express what you don't accept about yourself. This doesn't mean becoming complacent or refusing to grow, but rather accepting your starting point and your human imperfections while still working toward positive change. Paradoxically, accepting yourself as you are makes it easier to become who you want to be. Self-acceptance involves embracing all aspects of yourself, including the parts you've been taught are unacceptable or shameful. This shadow work is essential because the energy you spend hiding parts of yourself is energy that could be used for creativity, connection, and growth. When you can integrate your shadow aspects with compassion, you become more whole and naturally more authentic. Authentic living often involves what could be called divine discontent, a healthy dissatisfaction with anything in your life that doesn't align with your true nature. This discontent isn't the anxious dissatisfaction that comes from comparing yourself to others, but rather the wise recognition that certain situations, relationships, or choices don't serve your authentic expression and growth. This divine discontent serves as an internal compass, always pointing you toward greater alignment with your true self. It might manifest as restlessness in a job that doesn't utilize your gifts, longing for deeper connections in superficial relationships, or a sense of emptiness when you're living according to others' expectations rather than your own values. The process of coming home to yourself involves releasing the performance and pretense that anxiety often maintains and allowing your natural way of being to emerge. This might mean speaking more softly if that's your natural voice, taking more time to process if that's your natural pace, or expressing more enthusiasm if that's your authentic energy. It's about letting yourself be who you actually are rather than who you think you should be. This coming home process often involves grieving the parts of yourself that you abandoned or suppressed in order to fit in or survive. There may be sadness about the time lost living inauthentically, anger about the pressures that forced you to hide your true nature, or fear about fully embracing who you are. These emotions are natural and necessary parts of the authenticity journey. Authentic self-care goes beyond surface-level practices to include making choices that truly serve your well-being rather than just looking like good self-care. This might mean saying no to social obligations that drain you even if others think they're good for you, or pursuing creative projects that fulfill you even if they don't make sense to others. True self-care is about honoring your authentic needs, which might be very different from what self-care looks like for other people. Your authentic self might need more solitude, more adventure, more creative expression, more physical movement, or more intellectual stimulation than the average person. Honoring these unique needs is essential for maintaining your authentic energy and preventing the depletion that leads to anxiety. The practice of authentic decision-making involves checking in with your inner wisdom rather than just analyzing options intellectually. Your authentic self usually knows what's right for you at a level deeper than rational analysis. This doesn't mean ignoring practical considerations, but rather including your intuitive wisdom alongside logical thinking in your decision-making process. Learning to trust your inner guidance requires distinguishing between the voice of your authentic self and the voices of conditioning, fear, or social pressure. Your authentic voice usually feels calm, clear, and aligned with your values, even when it's suggesting something challenging. The voices of conditioning and fear often feel urgent, anxious, or based on should statements. Living authentically creates a natural state of inner alignment where your thoughts, feelings, and actions are all pointing in the same direction. This alignment eliminates the internal friction and contradiction that often fuels anxiety. When you're being true to yourself, there's a sense of flow and ease that supports natural calm and confidence. This alignment creates what could be called authentic power, not power over others, but power from within. When you're aligned with your authentic nature, you naturally radiate a quality of presence and confidence that others can feel. This isn't the brittle confidence of the false self trying to prove something, but the quiet confidence of someone who knows and accepts who they are. The resistance to authenticity often intensifies before it subsides, because your false self recognizes that its survival is threatened. You might experience increased anxiety, criticism from others who were invested in your old persona, or internal voices telling you that authenticity is selfish or dangerous. These are signs that you're making real progress, not reasons to retreat back into inauthenticity. Working with this resistance requires compassion for the parts of yourself that are afraid of change. Even positive change, your false self developed to protect you, and it's natural that it would resist being dismantled. Thanking these protective parts while gently persisting in your authenticity journey helps integrate rather than fight the resistance. The journey of authentic living is ultimately about remembering and reclaiming who you were before you learned to be someone else to survive or fit in. This original self is still within you, perhaps buried under layers of conditioning and protection, but intact and waiting to be expressed. When you give yourself permission to be authentic, anxiety often dissolves naturally because you're no longer fighting against your own nature. This remembering process often involves reconnecting with childhood interests, dreams, or ways of being that got discouraged or forgotten. What did you love before you learned what you were supposed to love? How did you naturally express yourself before you learned what expressions were acceptable? These early authentic impulses hold clues to your true nature. The final realization of authentic living is that your true self is not something you need to create or become. It's something you already are, that you need to stop hiding. The peace you've been seeking through managing anxiety is actually your natural state when you're not expending energy maintaining a false identity. Your authentic self is inherently calm, wise, and resilient because it's aligned with your true nature rather than fighting against it. When you fully embrace authentic living, you discover that anxiety was never really about external threats or circumstances. It was about the internal conflict between who you really are and who you were trying to be. When this conflict resolves through authentic self-expression, a natural peace emerges that doesn't depend on controlling external conditions or managing symptoms. This is the ultimate freedom. To be yourself so completely that anxiety has no foothold. To live so authentically that peace becomes your natural state. And to express your true nature so fully that you become a source of calm and inspiration for others who are still trapped in the performance of their false selves. Your authentic self is not just the cure for your anxiety. It's your gift to the world.